शुभ संध्या आपण मानको समस्त को नमस्कार। आपण माने आमर अनुरोध रक्षा करी गत कालीर जो कार्यक्रम थिला उद्घाटन कार्यक्रम एवं 3टा सेमिनार थिला भारतर गणतंत्र भविष्यत कौन तार विभिन्न विषय उपरे गत काली 3टा सेमिनार थिला एवं आज गोटे थिला सेतिरे आपण माने मध्य बहु संख्यार जोग देइथिले लोहे एकाडेमी रे। आज प्रति वर्ष भरी 2018 रु रवि रायंकर देहांत है 2017 2018 रु लगातार भाव में एठारे एवं बेले बेले दिल्ली रे रवि राय दीक्षांत भाषण आज संविधान दिवस नवेम्बर 26 मसीह पालन हो आसुची। आज जो माने आमर अनुरोध रक्षा करी आछंती ए सभा को समस्त मो कृतज्ञता जनाऊँगी।
रवि राय केवल ओडिशा भितरे बा ओडिशा माटी रे केवल तांकर राजनीति सीमाबद्ध नथिला। आम समस्त आप जानती रवि राय आरंभ जड़े समाजवादी भाव एवं समाजवादी दल जो नेतृत्व नौले डॉक्टर राममोहन लोहिया सहित नेतृत्व मानिकी एवं सारा भारत वर्ष से ऑल इंडिया दायित्व थिले। हैदराबाद रे सेंट्रल ऑफिस था जो एसएसपी संयुक्त सोशलिस्ट पार्टी से जनरल सेक्रेटरी एवं भारत वर्ष राजनीति भारत वर्ष परिवर्तन इमरजेंसी पूर्व इमरजेंसी पर केंद्र मंत्री हवा एवं लोकसभा बाचस्पति हवा ये सब भितर किंतु देशर लोक राजनीति जन राजनीति जो प्रयास था तेणु सी भारी सारा परिचित एवं आज भी आपण सामने धन्यवाद देवी प्रोफेसर आनंद कुमार को आनंद कुमार उद्यम एवं विशेषकर आम प्रोफेसर मनोरंजन महांती सहयोग दिल्ली रे सारा भारत वर्ष विभिन्न व्यक्ति को लेकर रवि राय श्रुति 100 वर्ष आज आरंभ है एक वर्ष 2026 पर्यंत यही 26 नवेम्बर 26 पर्यंत 26 पर्यंत एक वर्ष विभिन्न कार्यक्रम हम केवल रवि राय को केवल रवि राय प्रशंसा करवा रवि राय को केवल रवि राय ना नहीं कि नुह किंतु जो मूल्यबोध पाई आम रवि राय को जानू चिन्हू जो भी आज आम श्रुति कमिटी सारा देशपाई और राज्यपाई कर तार एक 2-3टी कथा निश्चित आज दिन आज जो भाव में देखु ग्लोबल परिप्रेक्षी विश्व परिप्रेक्षी जो राजनीति संपूर्ण भाव में कंपनी कॉर्पोरेट एवं पूंजीवादी व्यवस्था भितर नियंत्रित एवं तार सहित जो धर्म ना जो राजनीति घृणा राजनीति ये दीटा राजनीति सबुठ भारत वर्ष सबुठ बड़ संकट स्थिति करछि एवं आउ गोटे बड़ संकट होची भारत वर्ष राजनीति भ्रष्ट जो भ्रष्ट राजनीति कहुच्छी से अधिका बार आहरी बढ़ुची। तो रवि राय जो जीवनी जो विचार जो दर्शन आचरण एवं विचार जो आचरण भितर जो क्षमता थिला से हूँ चरित्र तांकर सादगी जीवन तांकर सरल जीवन तांकर साधुता एवं समाजवाद गणतांत्रिक समाजवाद पाई संवैधानिक व्यवस्था संविधान को मानिबा पाई संविधान को लागू करिबा पाई से बाचस्पति थांतु किंबा केंद्र मंत्री थांतु तांकर जो बद्ध परिकर कार्य प्रतिबद्धता सेटा हूँ सबुठ बड़ आज दिन में जो अभाव जोटा जो ऑनेस्ट इन पॉलिटिक्स एवं पॉलिटिकल कमिटमेंट टू द पीपल टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से दृष्टि आम निष्पत्ति करा जे भारत वर्ष विभिन्न राज्य जो मैंने करेंगे से इश्यू को नहीं करेंगे आज प्रासंगिकता नहीं करेंगे रवि राय विकास को नहीं करी आम देशर जो समस्या मूल समस्या गुड़ी से अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट हो से घृण राजनीति हो से धर्मनिरपेक्षता हो से समाजवाद विचार हो कि से भोट चोरी हो जहाँ भी हो जो जो समस्या आसको नहीं विभिन्न कार्यक्रम करा आम आज भुवनेश्वर में ओडिशा आरंभ होती शताब्दी कमिटर कार्यक्रम गत कालू प्रोफेसर मनोरंजन महांती जो प्रस्ताव क्रमे जो आम निश्चित भाव में भारत वर्ष जो अति जो समस्या को लेकर से समस्या होती सबुठ बड़ समस्या होती जो गणतंत्र प्रति वर्तमान जो विपद इंडियन डेमोक्रेसी अंडर थ्रेट द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल डेमोक्रेसी इज अंडर थ्रेट फासिज्म इज ग्रोइंग ऑन ये जो बुरी समस्या को लेकर रवि राय जो लिगासी से रवि राय लिगासी को लेकर 2 दिनिया आम नेशनल सेमिनार करूँ एवं से विषय वस्तु विभिन्न देशर विभिन्न अंचल एवं आमर ओडिशा बुद्धिजीवी समाजकर्मी राजनेता मान किसी निमंत्रण करूँ भाग नापी सेमिनार रे आज सरी आसंता दिन में मुझे अनुरोध करी जो मैंने अच्छा जो मैंने इंटरेस्टेड रवि राय श्रुति ये सब इश्यू नहीं पार युवक मान पाखु तो ओडिशा भी जो प्रोग्राम हम विभिन्न स्थान में ये इश्यू को लेकर प्रसंग को लेकर हम केवल रवि राय श्रुति रवि राय भल मंद रवि राय जन्म होते नुह एक विचार को लेकर रवि राय विचार को लेकर से लोहा एकाडेमी रवि राय सृष्टि कर आज जो लोहा एकाडेमी से तार कार्य संपादन करने चेष्टा कर तार भी आज परिणाम आज सूची कमिटी एवं ओडिशा 72 वर्ष रवि राय अनेक प्रशंसक जन को लेकर जी जिते भी कर निज निज इंडिपेंडेंट भाव में आम स्वागत करूँ केवल नुह आम जो सूची कमिटी करम जरिया हम ता नुह रवि राय आमर पैटेंट नुहति रवि राय बर्तमान देशर लोकंर से दृष्टि आम जो जो जी जो कर स्वागत करूँ मु विशेष बर्तमान कहनी कि कहबी जे आम आज आम लोहा एकाडेमी प्रति वर्ष प्राय गत वर्ष ठारू अब जो आरंभ करें जे प्रति वर्ष ये आज दिन में देशर जड़े जो मैंने जल जंगल जंगपाई परिवेश जो मैंने अति काम कर लोकों जो मैंने उदाहरण से रे से आम प्रति वर्ष जन को रवि राय लोक शक्ति सबुज पुरस्कार सबुज सम्मान आम ठीक कर दि जाऊँगी सिम्बलिक भाव में 25,000 टंका एवं सम्मान आम सम्मानित कर सम्मानित जी नुह लोहा एकाडेमी और आम कार्य भी आम गर्वित जे से भाई लोक सम्मानित करने तेणु आज सेंटेनरी ईयर यही जन्मदिन में आम आम राज्य एवं राज्य बाहर परिचित जी देशी चाषी एवं देशी चाषर गवेषक जड़े शिक्षक थे हेडमास्टर थे रिटायर कले आसिकी पुणी जमिकी गले एवं पारंपरिक जो भाव में चली आसूला फर्टिलाइज व केमिकल केमती कोभली भाव में विषमुक्त खाद्य सृष्टि हम एवं शह जी विहन बुड़ी जाऊँगी संग्रह करा से दृष्टि जार अवदान आम बहुत लोग काम कर से भितर भारत वर्ष प्रतिष्ठित हो जाती आम राज्यर नरीश्वर श्री नटवर्षण आम सम्मानित एमती कर आज एवं आशा करी प्रोफेसर मनोरंजन महांती एवं प्रोफेसर आनंद कुमार भी संक्षिप्त वक्तव्य किसी कहे तापर भी आमर स्मारकी वक्तव्य प्रोफेसर हरगोपाल देवे।
बंधुगण आम चलित वर्षर जो रवि राय लोकशक्ति सबुज सम्मान 2025 प्रदान करने जाऊँ ओडिशार गर्व तथा ओडिशार विशिष्ट देशी चाषर जे जड़े प्रतिष्ठित कृषक तथा जड़े गवेषक श्रीयुक्त नटवर षडंगी आम सम्मान दबू आज आम गण अच्छा प्रोफेसर आनंद कुमार एवं प्रोफेसर मनोरंजन महांती एवं सब अतिथि माने से माने सम्मान देवे आम अध्यक्षा श्रीमती कृष्णा महांती अच्छा श्रीयुक्त नटवर षडंगी को उत्तरीय मानपत्र तथा एक मोमेंटो प्रदान करूँ ता सहित 25,000 टंकार धनराशि आंदोलन को प्रदान करुछु।
ये 1967 5,000 टंका खर्च पूरी लोकसभा निर्वाचित होते रवि राय से आप बुझे जे से केड़ बड़ लोक थे एवं लोक पाखे केवल पहुँचते मुझे केवल बर्तमान कहबी जो सम्मान मत सम्मानित कराई यार श्रेय ओडिशार कोटि कोटि चाषी मान को देवी से चाषी मान सकाशे मुझे आपण पाखे ठिया हो पारी जहाँ कि करुची सब चाषी भाई मान पाए रवि नायकर जीवन में समस्त समय से खर्च करते समाज साधारण मनीष श्रमिक कृषक से उत्थान पाए से कल्याण पाए आज नरिशे आम जो परीक्षा करुचु से मानक नहीं करमर से माने होती ये सम्मान अधिकारी पुणी थे आपण मान समस्त को मोर विनम्र नमस्कार जनाऊँगी मंचासीन समस्त विशिष्ट व्यक्ति मान नमस्कार जनाई मु विदाय दूचे।
सातटा जगार कोरापुट राउरकेला झारसुगुड़ा अनुगोल केउंझर एम सब 7टा जगार बड़ बड़ प्रोजेक्ट द्वारा जो मैंने सब डिस्प्लेस होती से आम शुणीचु कोरापुटे प्राय 300 आदिवासी पुरुष महिला 200 खंड महिला से एमती बहुत जगार होकर शुणिक जो रेकर्ड होता आम कहलु जे यहाँ खाली गोटे प्रेस स्टेटमेंट कि गोटे रिपोर्ट होकर खाली होगले लोक भूली जाऊँच यहीटा गोटे परमानेंट कंट्रीब्यूशन भाया गोटे दस्तावेज करके एमान लिखिले गोटे खूब सुंदर इंट्रोडक्शन लिखिं गोलक बेरीनाथ और संदीप पट्टनायक तेणु यहीटा गोटे फंडामेंटल डॉक्यूमेंट प्राइमरी डॉक्यूमेंट ऑन डिस्प्लेसमेंट इन इंडिया आम चाहूँ भारत वर्षर सबू जो सब विस्थापन होमती सब पीपल्स वॉइसेस रेकर्ड करी पूरा देशवासी आगे रखा जाऊ एवं या उपरे बेस करी आमर गोटे डिमांड रही गोटे स्टैट्यूटरी कमिशन ऑन डिस्प्लेस्ड पीपल्स राइट्स ए नेशनल कमिशन फॉर डिस्प्लेस्ड पीपल्स राइट्स यहीटा हो आपण मैंने या समर्थन करते करताल देकर समर्थन करते।
मु प्रोफेसर महांती को धन्यवाद देवी सी आम सांगे संपूर्ण भाव रही एवं आमको विभिन्न दिगरु तांकर सहायता सब मिलूँ से आम कृतज्ञ। आम गहन अच्छा प्रोफेसर आनंद कुमार जी आज सभार मुख्य अतिथि तथा रवि राय जन्म शतवार्षिकी समितिर राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष अच्छा श्रीयुक्त आनंद कुमार तांकर वक्तव्य देवे ता पूर्व मु निवेदन करी आमर अध्यक्षा श्रीमती कृष्णा महांती तांको उत्तरीय दे सम्मानित करी।
मेरे लिए बहुत सम्मान की बात है कि मैं कल से उड़ीसा के तमाम समर्पित बुद्धिजीवियों और सामाजिक कार्यकर्ताओं के बीच में रवि राय जी का स्मरण करने का मौका मिल रहा है। आज हम लोग सब लोग इस देश की आवाज़ की तरह से काम कर रहे प्रोफेसर हरगोपाल को सुनने के लिए आए हैं। उनके और आपके बीच में हमारे जैसे विद्यार्थी का खड़े रहना ठीक नहीं है। आज क्या बात है कि रवि राय जी की शताब्दी वर्ष में उनके पुराने कॉलेज रॉबिन्स यूनिवर्सिटी से लेकर के बुद्ध मंदिर तक उनकी याद हम सबको जोड़ रही है। बौद्ध लोग ये कहते हैं कि कोई भी व्यक्ति हम आप सभी, हमारे 3 काय है। एक तो शरीर काय है, 60, 70, 80 बरस के बाद ख़त्म हो जाना। किसी का भी जीवन हो, उसका शरीर 70, 80 बरस, 90 बरस के बाद ज़्यादा नहीं चलता। दूसरा हिस्सा हमारे जीवन का, हमारे कर्म काय है। हमारे शरीर के ख़त्म होने के बाद भी जो कर्म हम करते हैं, अच्छा बुरा, रावण का, राम का, दुर्योधन का, युधिष्ठिर का, उनके शरीर के नष्ट होने के बहुत दिनों बाद तक, किसी का शताब्दियों तक लोग याद रखते हैं। और तीसरा उनका विचार काय है, कि उनके सपने थे जिन्होंने उनके जीवन को आधार दिया। रविराज जी के लिए उनका कर्म काय है, जिन्होंने कर्म किया, जिससे एक आदर्श बनाया। अवसरवाद और सिद्धांतहीनता की राजनीति की आंधी में वो मशाल की तरह से जलते रहे। और अक्सर हम उनसे पूछते थे क्या हो रहा है और क्या होगा। हम लोग उनसे कहते थे आपको जो दिखाई पड़ रहा है उससे ज़्यादा हमको थोड़ी दिखाई पड़ेगा। आप तो अंग्रेज़ों के खिलाफ लड़े, आप यथास्थितिवादी ताकतों, सामंतों के खिलाफ लड़े, उसमें जीते। अब आप परेशान हैं तो हम कहाँ से इसमें से आसान रास्ता बता सकते हैं। जो दिखाई पड़ रहा था उनको क्षितिज पर राजनीति के संसार में, उसे वो बहुत विह्वल थे। नैतिकता का कोई आधार नहीं बचा है, सिद्धांतों की कोई कीमत नहीं रह गई, कोई चमक नहीं रह गई। ऐसे में रवि राय जी का जीवन अंधेरे में रोशनी की तरह से हम लोगों को दिलासा दिलाता है कि नहीं, अभी भी आप सिद्धांत के रास्ते पर चलें तो कोई बड़ा पद नहीं मिलेगा, चुनाव में जीतेंगे नहीं, लेकिन याद लोगों की बनी रहेगी। हम प्रोफेसर हरगोपाल का स्वागत करते हुए बहुत आह्लादित हैं, क्योंकि प्रोफेसर हरगोपाल उस परंपरा के हैं जिसके रवि राय जी भी थे। सत्यम ब्रूयात प्रियम ब्रूयात, न ब्रूयात सत्यम अप्रियम। सच बोलो लेकिन प्रिय तरीके से बोलो, अप्रिय तरीके से सच मत बोलो। रवि राय जी अजात शत्रु थे। वो बड़े से बड़े लोगों की आलोचना करते थे, लेकिन जब वो लोग मिलते थे तो उनको मित्र भाव से मिलते थे। मैं इसका साक्षी रहा हूँ। उन्होंने सर्वोच्च न्यायालय के एक जज को महाभियोग का दोषी पाया। उन्होंने यूनियन कैबिनेट के 6 मिनिस्टर को डिस्क्वालीफाई कर दिया। उन्होंने पार्टी के तोड़ने में हिस्सा लिया, पार्टी बनाने में हिस्सा लिया। जिसको उनसे नुकसान हुआ वो भी उनसे मिलता था तो मित्र भाव से ही मिलता था। ऐसे ही प्रोफेसर हरगोपाल जी भी हैं। हरगोपाल जी को मैं पिछले 50 साल से भारतीय बौद्धिक संसार के क्षितिज पर देख रहा हूँ। एक राग, एक आवाज़, एक प्रतिबद्धता। आइए हम सब लोग उनका स्वागत करें और रवि राय जी जैसे एक तरह से साधक की याद में उनके भाषण को सुने। आदरणीय प्रोफेसर हरगोपाल।
प्रोफेसर आनंद कुमार सबुबले जड़े छात्र वत्सल प्रोफेसर एवं जड़े अति जनप्रिय मनीष जी लोकंकर अधिकार पर सब लड़ाई करता मु धन्यवाद दूची। वर्तमान स्मारकी वक्तृता समय प्रोफेसर जी हरगोपाल जी आम गहन में आसी पहुँचती गत काली ठारू। सी बर्तमान स्मारकी वक्तृता प्रदान करेंगे। ता पूर्व मु अध्यक्षा श्रीमती कृष्णा महांती को निवेदन करी जे उत्तरीय दे से स्वागत जनइबे। बंधुगण काली राति 12टार पाखापाखि 5.5 घंटा लेट्रे फ्लाइट आसिक पहुँचला। सी एवं धर्मपत्नी आसिक पहुँचले भुवनेश्वर एयरपोर्ट रे। प्रोफेसर हरगोपाल एभली जड़े मनीष राजनीति विज्ञान प्रोफेसर हेले भी जड़े एभली मनीष जी सब लड़ाई को एवं गोटे सब युद्ध को सामना करिवार मनीष।
It's a great honor for somebody like me to speak on this occasion. I also feel a little intimidated because the type of the people sitting here and such insight they have of life and society, that I think it requires a little courage to speak to such friends. I also feel intimidated because those who delivered this lecture earlier also include people, very outstanding people. I do not know whether I fit into that galaxy of people who delivered this lecture earlier. But I feel greatly honored that I have been asked to speak on this occasion on future of Indian democracy. Rabi Ray, or Roy, I'm sorry if I am spelling his name wrongly. This particularly reminiscences which have been brought, when you go through about 40 persons who have written about him, include people from different walks of life, not one, all different walks, civil servant, police officers, his own colleagues, his own followers. And throughout the book, one thing that's common is that Rabi Ray, both as a person and his life and his practice and his convictions. Now I think he provides a role model, and recalling memory of such a person is to in a way redefine what is democracy. And Rabi Ray personally left an impact on everybody who met him. And irrespective of the walk of life, in fact, one police officer writes about him that he was continuously watching him. He was in charge of intelligence department. He must have written much about him and his activity. And he said he differs with him, but still admires him. See, this is the personality of a person who was not only a democrat in conviction, but a democrat in practice. Living life as a democrat is more difficult than talking about democracy. To be a democrat is not easy. We think democracy, we keep on using it, but to live as a democrat in terms of relationship with other human beings is something very exceptional. And I think he belonged to that category of people who practiced and also preached democracy. Now, when I speak about future of democracy, if you take Rabi Ray's life, you have to define democracy. It's not only we are talking of democracy in terms of state and society, but we are also talking in terms of democracy as a social order. Democracy is not only a form of governance, but it's a way of life. Now, unless society also increasingly democratized, it is very difficult to imagine a democratic state. So, democratic state is a product of a social process. But in India, given the nature of hierarchical order of the society, Constitution of India, see, they have created a democratic state and mandated the state to transform the society into a democratic society. See, this is, to me, is a paradox. State is an organized power. In a crude sense, it's an organized institutionalized violence. And how can a state, given the nature and character and role of the state as a stabilizer of the order, can be mandated to transform this society? Can a state transform this society, or is it the society which transforms the state? Indian Constitution mandated and thought that Indian state will play the role of a change agent. This assumption was made, and not that those who have contributed to the making of Constitution, including Dr. Ambedkar, they were not very optimistic also. Dr. Ambedkar, having been instrumental in drafting the Constitution, was not very sure that India can be transformed into a democratic society. And if you look his work on revolution, counter-revolution, in fact, in this particular article, he suspects that even if India performs a revolution, democratic revolution, the Brahminical society and Brahminical ideology is capable of performing a counter-revolution. And his argument in that particular article is that an ideology, a Brahminical ideology, which could counter and which could in a way destroy Buddhism, is an order which is capable of destroying a democratic order. Because Buddha, where we were meeting, in the surroundings of Buddha, Buddha was one of the rebellions in the Indian history. He was a rebel. He said God is inconsequential, whether he exists or not. The causes for dukkha are in the social structure, not in the external. Now, therefore, the causal relation that was built by Dr. Ambedkar is that Buddha was a rationalist. Buddha always thought that restructuring the society is one way of solving the problems, not waiting for the divine and the external factors to solve the problems of the society. This is how Dr. Ambedkar, even after the inauguration of the Constitution, he warned that Constitution of course postulates a democratic society. But he warned the Indian society that you have to create a democratic society also. That's the reason why he said, today we enter into a society where we provided political equality through one person, one vote, one value. But he said if that does not lead to social and economic democracy, people of India will block the Constitution, which we have so laboriously built. This was his, fear. And today, when we see, it looks very prophetic. It looks very prophetic whether democracy will survive or not. And we have reached a stage where such lectures would be possible or not. I mean, we are not very sure that how long, if the things continue the way they are unfolding, we are not very sure that Lohiya Academy will be able to perform the task it has taken upon itself. I give an anecdote, very personal anecdote. I taught in University of Hyderabad for 25 years. I was a head of department, I was a dean, I was for some time in charge vice chancellor. Students of University of Hyderabad, I must have narrated to Manoranjan, students of University of Hyderabad invited me to give a lecture on future of democracy. Same topic. And when I went to the university, gates were closed. University of Hyderabad, 2 gates. One small gate, one is a big gate. So since my son teaches there, we were entering through small gate, and my son asked the watchman why the gate is closed. Then he said, that man didn't recognize me, but he said, I believe when Professor Haragopal is coming, everything is closed inside, shopping complex, everything. There is a tension on the campus, and his lecture is not permitted. And I entered, I understand, near the big gate, there was a huge police force to prevent me from going into the university. And I went inside, of course, large number of students were there, our mic was arranged. And I was so surprised that a lecture on future of Indian democracy organized by Students' Union is why, university is objecting for that lecture. As I told the students, you don't need any lecture. This experience is enough about the future of Indian democracy. Because somebody cannot speak on the future of Indian democracy in University of Hyderabad, then what is the future of democracy? Then in the meanwhile, registrar, PRO came, and then they went on, they asked him, sir, please, see, Vice Chancellor is not around, we don't have the permission. I said, why do you need a permission to give a lecture to students? By their own teacher. They no, sir, there is some problem, that, this, they went on saying, sir, come tomorrow, we'll take the permission of the Vice Chancellor. And the students were very, they said nothing doing this lecture will be organized. Then when registrar told me, sir, you were yourself, held the positions in University of Hyderabad, things have changed, and the Vice Chancellor may be very unhappy if he comes to know that. So please wait for one day. This was published in a box column in the newspaper that Haragopal's lecture is not permanent. See, the University of Hyderabad invited people from different dissenting voices. When we invited Arundhati Roy to University of Hyderabad, I just went to inform the Vice Chancellor that she will be delivering lecture. Dean and Vice Chancellor, I'll come and preside. See, Vice Chancellors were feeling happy to come and preside Arundhati's lecture is a university which is not allowing my lecture. See, something has changed. This incident is not an isolated incident. And Jawaharlal Nehru University, Arun Kumar would know that, hey, university is with such a powerful dissenting voice. This university has supplied people to different walks of life. Some army man was arguing on the TV channel, I am a product of JNU. There are ministers who are product of JNU. There are hundreds of IAS officers, IPS officers. But that university today is facing such a critical times that I don't know how many lectures have delivered, post-dinner lecture. But last 10, 12 years, nobody can deliver. JNU can't have our lecture. The context has changed. Now this, therefore, when we are talking of the future of Indian democracy, in the context of memory of a stalwart who contributed, who dreamt for a socialist democracy, when we look back and this 80 years of evolution of Indian democracy, I am a bit surprised that 3 days back, Chidambaram has written an article, Democracy in Danger. And who is Chidambaram? Chidambaram is the one who brought UPA. And UPA is such a dangerous law that unlike Tada, Pota, earlier repressive laws, which have a time, and they lapse, or they were allowed to be lapse, we fought against the Tada and Pota. UPA is not like Tada and Pota, it's a part of the Indian jurisprudence. It has become a part of the civil, is a criminal law. And now nobody can change, it doesn't have a time limit. It is a part of the Indian law, legal structure. Now in other words, if Chidambaram writes that Indian democracy is in danger, one is surprised that you have to be out of power to say that democracy is in danger. When you are in power, what were you doing? Look at Rabi. What has he done? When he became a speaker, he set a role model that what should be the ideal role of a speaker of Lok Sabha. He opened the debates to the public and he gave enough of time to the opposition and he was a dispassionate, and whatever time that he served as a Lok Sabha speaker, he knew that what is the spirit of the constitution, he knew what is the importance of Lok Sabha. He knew what is the role of opposition parties, how much of space they should have. Because it is the opposition which protects the democracy, it is the opposition which contributes to democracy. In fact, President Kennedy has written a very interesting book, Profiles in Courage, when he was a senator. He writes about the biography of about 10-12 senators of America, who would have otherwise become president of America, have sacrificed to stand for a principle. After Second World War, when hostages were taken to America, they wanted to hang them. One of the senators said, no, you have to apply law of the land and they should be tried. They should be tried. And he lost his presidency. He became unpopular. He writes about all these senators who lost the chance of becoming American president because they stood for an unpopular value at that particular point of time, but they thought that contributing something to the enrichment of values is more important than becoming president of America. And Kennedy says American democracy is protected by them, not by Roosevelt, Lincoln and all that. These are the dissenting voices which gave a sort of, legacy, democratic legacy. But even that America today is passing through a turmoil, and we have a president, nobody understands what type of psychology, what type of president he is, and what happened to American democracy. Now, one person who has been consistently arguing that America is not a democracy is Noam Chomsky. For the last 4 to 5 decades, maybe he has written 30 to 40 books. But Chomsky has been continuously arguing that America is a corporate democracy, it's not a substantive democracy. It's a formal democracy, but not a substantive democracy. It's only form, it's in democracy, but it's not in essence. And his book on political economy, human rights, 2 volumes were banned. They were banned in America. And when he fought legal battle and got the ban lifted, he wrote an introduction to the volume, what happened to his first volume of these 2 books and how it was banned, how he fought a legal battle. So that's why Chomsky says that if you say something is a democracy, you may be a democracy, formal democracy. But whether you are a substantive democracy, that's why he makes a distinction between formal democracy and substantive democracy. Now when you come to India, yes, we have a democratic constitution. Definitely it's a very progressive constitution, there is no doubt. And those who have written constitution were people with some, vision. And they also knew that creating a democratic society or democratic state in India is an extremely difficult exercise. So laboriously for 2.5 years they have taken time to write the Constitution of India. So therefore they gave a democratic constitution to India, and that democratic constitution, there are certain parameters of democracy as political science teachers. We keep on telling that when we talk of democracy in the classroom, we talk of liberal democracy. And a liberal democracy is the one which has certain parameters. An elected parliament, a powerful opposition, then rule of law, then constitutional morality. We talk of the autonomous institutions, particularly universities and other commissions. Now we talk of that as a part of a democratic structure. That is the architecture of the constitution. Now what has happened to the constitutional institutions? When we talk of the future, what is happening to our institutions? When we see that what is happening to the constitutional institutions, taking the judiciary, there may be legal fraternity different from legal fraternity. But when you look at judiciary, see, people, that is the last resort. Within the constitutional framework, last resort of the citizen is the Supreme Court. But the judgment after judgment that the Supreme Court is delivering, surprises you that how judiciary can give such type of judgments, going completely outside the constitutional norms and the rule of law. Now the rule of law is considered as one of the essential requirements of a constitution, of any constitutional democracy, that to apply the law. And rule of law is such a beautiful thing in one sense that when Kistaya Bhumigaud, who killed a landlord, were being tried in Andhra Pradesh High Court, Kannabiran was appearing. Then judge asked Kannabiran that Kanabran, why have you come to the court in which they have no faith? They want to completely fight the Indian state. And why you come to the court when they have no faith in the constitution, when they have no faith in the rule of law, they want to fight against the state. Kanabran's answer was, the values under trial are not their values. Values under trial are your values, whether you believe in the Indian constitution. And he asked the judge, where is written in the Indian constitution that those who do not believe in the constitution are not entitled for protection of the constitution? Has the constitution said anywhere that those who do not believe in this constitution are not entitled for protection of this constitution? It is not like a Bible and Quran. Constitution extends equality before the law and equal protection of the law. And when you say equality before the law, then everybody is entitled. You go into the case and you give the punishment, that's the thing. But they are, they are entitled for a trial. They are entitled for a trial. Now, if you say that I will not have a fair trial for them, although Marx said that equality before the law is a juridical illusion. And he said that how can there be equality before the law when there is no equality in the material existence? When there is no equality within the society, how can they be equal before the law? That was Marx, of 19th century. But from 19th century onwards, several people's struggles, people's sacrifices, they have given the human rights. Behind every right, there is a sacrifice, there is a struggle. And when we teach human rights in the class, we say human rights is a historic compromise between capital and labor. And capital did extend certain protections to the labor. Organized unions, right to strike, bargain, entitlements. So therefore, labor is not something, where they are opposed to each other, but the capital also made certain adjustments, compromises. And that's the reason we have human rights for the labor. Now, therefore, the rights are a product of a historical struggle also, people's struggles. Therefore, when we teach Marx, we do say that Marx said it's an illusion. But maybe, at that point of time, Marx did feel that how can capital give the rights? But I think history has been changing. But at the same time, of course, Marx said that capitalism may liberate human beings from material needs. It may provide certain standards of living. But Marx said democracy is not only type of certain rights, but democracy is the collective will of the people, collective life of the people, individual being a part of the collective. Because the problem of human rights, liberal human rights, is individual is the bearer of rights. Atomistic individual is the bearer of rights. Although in India we have certain rights to the collective, but even the rights that are extended to a collective, only individuals enjoy certain rights, but not the entire collective. But although the rights are given in the name of the collective, Dalit right, tribal rights and all that. But the whole question, therefore, is that today, because of the long struggles of the people, we have certain notion of democracy and certain, the notion of democracy has been expanding, that's a liberal democracy. But liberal democracy is a democracy. Rabi would not agree that it is a democracy. He would say that democracy has to be a part of the, everyday living, and it has to be a democracy. It's a socialist democracy. Now there is a qualitative difference between liberal democracy and qualitative democracy, socialist democracy. Socialist democracy, it builds a society where human beings are not treated with dignity, with self-respect, with equality. I think morning, Prof. Samata, that is the collective and individual. So therefore, when we are defining, but what is happening in India? Now this constitutional democracy itself is a progress of human civilization, there is no doubt. But that constitutional democracy, as Dr. Ambedkar said, there will be a counter-revolution. In 80 years, almost we are passing through a counter-revolution in terms of what has happened to democracy. It's also very striking to note, apart from Dr. Ambedkar, Jawaharlal Nehru wrote a letter in 1948, November, that constitution was being drafted. He wrote a letter to Jayaprakash. And in that letter, Nehru said that fundamentalist forces are very strong in India. I am quoting Nehru, fundamentalist forces are very strong in India. If socialist forces do not join together, if all of us do not join together, there is the danger of fascism in India. Nehru used the word fascism, 48. That means they had some foresight. Dr. Ambedkar, Nehru, the Karwan carried the role of socialist Indian democracy, a special issue of Karwan, where they quoted Jawaharlal Nehru born, and he said socialist forces have to be joined together, otherwise the fundamental forces will take over. This was very prophetic. Ambedkar said that the forces may perform counter-revolution. These fears were there, right from the beginning these fears were there. But then socialist forces, now his own life experience tells how they got fragmented. Biju Patnaik, Fernandez. Now how people again fell apart and how Rabi was very unhappy with what was happening within his own lifetime. But this has happened in the progressive democratic forces. Democratic, progressive, socialist forces remained fragmented and the fundamental forces remained united. In 100 years of history of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, it had not split. There is no, differences among them, whatever that may be the reason, there is no differences. They captured the political power and they worked very passionately, they worked at grassroots level. Professor Mohanty was telling, we have to work at grassroots. They are working at the grassroots, they work very passionately. But they want to create a Hindu Rashtra and nobody knows what is that Hindu Rashtra. And about 5-6 years back, maybe a little longer, there was a meeting of the Sangh Parivar groups in Goa. And Hindu newspaper carried every day small news item. I was teaching in Bangalore National Law School. I suddenly saw this news item. These groups which met in Goa, first day they said, we are rejecting Constitution of India. Very clear. They said that they debated and at the end of that day they said we are rejecting Constitution of India. Second day they said we are rejecting democracy. The reason for rejecting Constitution and democracy is they are Western concepts. They have no indigenous roots. They are not based on cultural tradition of India. They are borrowed. Therefore they said do not fit into the Indian society. And therefore on the third day say we will have a Hindu Rashtra. If Hindu Rashtra means bringing back the Manusmriti, now large number of women in this country who vote or who speak on behalf of these entire fundamental forces. But recently there is a pamphlet published by these fundamental forces, and in that very interestingly there is a question that if a husband beats the wife, what should wife do? Forget about the rule of law, constitution and all that. And the answer is that wife should think that husband is liberating her from the sins that she committed in the past life, and now she is entitled for elevation of life, and therefore wife should be grateful to the husband for beating her. Now, in 21st century, if you are circulating this type of pamphlets and saying that wife should be completely subjugated to husband, what is the type of relations that you are imagine what is the nature of relations between human beings. Now, therefore, when I talk about democracy in a political system, it was also very clear that when the Constitution of India was inaugurated, they said we are dressing up the Indian a democratic constitution on an undemocratic society. If society is undemocratic and the constitution is democratic, they said we are dressing up the undemocratic society. And therefore, transforming the society and democratizing the society also is a precondition for a democratic politics and democratic state. If you look at the constitution and the way Constitution of India is working, obviously it's very clear that the constitution is gradually becoming weaker and weaker. Constitutional institutions are almost weakened. Now, if you look at this, two things happen. The rise of the fundamentalist forces and the rise of neoliberal economy, there is an interrelationship. You can see that relation. 1990s, Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram went for a full hog liberal, entire neoliberal model, and 92 was Rath Yatra. It's not that Rath Yatra was an accidental thing. Rath Yatra and the rise of neoliberalism, they have some way. It's not an accident, but that's how politics work. Now suddenly culture has become very important. And as far as democratic forces are concerned in this country, progressive forces are concerned, I do not know about Manoranjan's reflection or Prafula's reflection. My own feeling is that the way the society is structured, the way human relations are structured in this country, now you have a constitutional vision of democratizing, but the neoliberal economy, the entire neoliberal economy is outside the constitutional framework, is negation of constitution. Because in the Indian constitution, if you look at Article 38 and 39, what does Article 38 say? Article 38 says reducing inequalities in income, status, opportunities and facilities. Reducing inequality in income, status, opportunity and facilities. What does Article 39 say? Means of production should not be concentrated in few hands, and wealth should not become detrimental to common good. I am quoting Constitution. Almost these two articles represent the Marxist line of thought that wealth should not become detrimental, inequalities have to be reduced. This is the constitutional vision. Neoliberalism intrinsically is unequalizing. Its very nature of the neoliberal economy is equality is no question. That's why once we have adopted a neoliberal economic model, it's outside the constitution, if not negation of the constitution. So we have this type of economy, and the rise of the fundamental forces are rising, culture becoming primacy, and in politics, economics becoming. And therefore, you find that while we are talking about the culture, and neoliberal economy is centralizing the wealth, centralizing the power, and we are talking of decentralization, and we are talking in terms of the department and all that. So therefore, as far as the culture is concerned, you are localizing. What we are calling domestic jurisdiction and human rights, they are saying that rights are to be located in domestic jurisdiction. There is a cultural relativism. Now you are talking of culture. And culture, nationalism and all that today this is the language of politics. But when I talk of nationalism, if you talk only cultural nationalism, what happens to the economics and what happens to politics, what happens to sovereignty, what happens to territory? So if these are the fundamental questions that will arise. Nationalism is not simply cultural. Nationalism, at least as far as it evolved, nation state, territory, sovereignty, resources belong to people living in a territory. All these questions become now problematic. So culture, you are continuously talking as a essence of the culture is, true that it determines the consciousness of people, partly the way of life, is all very important. But how to democratize the culture? Now, therefore, what has exactly happened to Indian society is, as the economy and politics are getting increasingly centralized and also getting a little, undemocratic, social relations in India are getting ruptured. I somehow see a reason or a link between centralization of the economy and the process of unequalizing, economic wealth of the society. Simultaneously, you are finding the social relations are getting ruptured. And during the last 20, 30 years, if you look at the nature of relations within the society, for example, state and constitution, let us see what is happening with social relations. Now, last 1 or 2 years, mother killing the children. This is, I do not know, in civilizational progress, the relation between mother and children is such a, sacred relation or such an emotional relation, such a biological relation. We can't imagine mother killing the children. Mother may be giving life to protect the children, but mother doesn't kill the children. But in my part of India, in Telangana, my mother has thrown 4 children in the Krishna river and jumped in the river. He committed suicide. One mother was killing 2 children. The elder daughter was running. She caught hold of her, cut her throat. What does it indicate? It is a deep crisis. Deep crisis if mother and child relation is ruptured and mother feels like killing the children, take away her life. The mothers are taking away their children, partly in my understanding, is that they think that nobody will take care of the children. That concern, or that somebody, uncle taking care of children, or somebody taking care of children, leaving the children, seeing that somebody will take care of her, she may take her life. But now mothers are convinced that if she dies, children will become orphans. Nobody will care for their children. Now this whole, process of the mothers killing children, number of incidents are happening. Husband killing the wife might have happened, but husband cuts her into 17 pieces, puts in the pressure cooker and cooks her, the body, and gives it to dogs. Now I am shocked. I am shocked because as a human species, something has gone wrong with the species. The process of dehumanization has gone reached a point where relations which are so laboriously built by centuries are getting ruptured. Now this killing each other has become common in Delhi. Fellow loved the girl, or he says he loved her. He was beating her, and people are watching, and it is being shown on the TV. He beats her to death. Nobody intervenes. People are watching, people are walking. But this fellow is going on beating her. And she dies. This is love. Love is hatred. If you don't love, you have no right to live. Love is a mutual, love is a reciprocal. But then this value of love, after all, if you see somebody like Devadas, he died, he almost committed something like a suicide because the woman whom he loved could not somehow marry her or could not live with her, and therefore Devadas gave you peace life. That's how Sharad thought that love is something where you become so passionate and you start repenting for taking one wrong decision. All these values, all the relationships which are structured over centuries on certain values, those values are on trial. If the relationships within the society are getting dehumanized and the state is becoming undemocratic, Now, if you do not democratize, humanize, equalize the social relations within the society, and the society is passing through this type of rupture, the naturally neoliberal economy has its own way. Because resistance of this type of economic model is possible only by a united society, only by a society which is, progressive forces, socialist forces, democrats, left forces. These, they have to join together. And the only society perhaps still is a tribal society. From morning session, everybody was referring to Adivasi. Now, what is the type of crisis Adivasis are going through? My own feeling is the onslaught on Adivasis not only because of the mineral wealth, but it's also because their way of life is democratic. They have no self-interest, they have no accumulation, they are collective, there is no atomistic individual. They don't have, ambitions. They live very simple life. They depend on that forest, and they are so intimately, their life is related to nature and to forest. And the Chief Minister Chhattisgarh gave an interview in Economic Times, and he said that we have to hand over the mineral wealth to the corporate, and whoever comes in the way of this, development, whether it's the nature or whether the human being, will eliminate them. It's an interview by the Chief Minister. Now, how you can, after all, what are the rights of the Adivasis? How long they have been fighting? Adivasis have been fighting for the last 2 centuries, Birsa Munda downwards. See the biography of Birsa Munda. He was fighting. And of course he was shot dead. He was just 23 years. From Birsa Munda to Komaram Bhim to the ongoing struggle, the people have sacrificed their lives for the rights of the people. Because of their struggles, we have Schedule 5 in the Indian Constitution. We have later SC/ST Atrocities Act. Then we have 1 of 70. When we have PISA, we have Forest Rights Act. Tribal struggles was producing both a response from the state, expanding the rights of the tribals, at the same time oppression. Now, Adivasis today is an example of what will happen to future of democracy, whatever little democratic life people have been living. Not just they believe, but they are living that life. And therefore, I think that the onslaught on the tribals is not only because of the wealth on which they are living, but because of their way of life also. Because any democracy, any corner of the world, considered as a threat to the model of economic development. So democracy obviously is a humanizing process, an equalizing process. It's an ennobling process. Now, this entire process of tribal struggles, and in 2010, 2009, say from 1996 in Andhra, the combined state of Andhra Pradesh, we had peace talks. S.R. Shankaran, a bureaucrat for that matter, a civil servant, 35 years, became a convener of Committee of Concerned Citizens. And they were 15 people, Kanabhinan, Puttur Venkateshwara, Tarakam, from each walk of life, from journalism, from judiciary, from, academic, people were drawn, and this is a moral power, this collective power, and this moral power was able to compel both the society and state to call the Maoist party for peace talks. Today, if you talk of peace talk, we also tried. The very first meeting in Delhi was completely ruptured. People were caught. 2 of our colleagues who participated, the people got frightened, and they have not allowed. And when we are proposing the peace talk, we went to Rahul Gandhi, we went to Kharge, we went to the communist parties. We crossed, we tried and asked the government of India, please talk to them. Instead of this loss of human life, there can be some peaceful method, find some democratic method of some talks. But absolutely the government of India is no mood to talk, because the minute you call them talk, the fundamental questions of the society of tribal wealth, mineral wealth, what is the mineral policy, all these questions will come for social debate. So therefore, they think that any peace negotiations will hit the model of development. And therefore the mineral wealth has to be handed over to the corporate. What Noam Chomsky said, that America is a corporate democracy, gradually India is becoming corporate democracy. Entire legal process, entire political process is driven by the corporate interests. Now therefore, we are passing through this, crisis. There is no doubt about the democracy, both as a form of governance, democracy as a way of life, is passing through certain crisis. But that does not mean that democracy has come to an end. No. I think, as Manoranjan mentioned, that Haragopal said, there are spaces. There are spaces. The very fact that we are meeting in Lohiya's, the environment, and the Buddha's environment. Now, obviously, there also have been inspiring people. And therefore, there are spaces. And there is a debate. What, of course, Amartya Sen argumented Indian. My only complaint against Amartya Sen's argument in India, of course, he built a very powerful argument that in India, argument is the central essence of Indian society. But this argument was between the equals, not between hierarchical order. See, the argument is, two Brahmins argued, but Brahmin didn't argue with a Dalit. If Dalit and Brahmin sat together and argued, that would have set a different tradition altogether. It's an equalizing relation. But powerful spoke to powerful. But still, Amartya Sen thought that even that is well enough. That instead of completely submitting to a particular idea, that India has 6 streams of thought. Both Nehru has written in his Discovery of India and Amartya Sen have written there are 6 streams of thought within Hinduism, contending thoughts. Therefore, this is a democratic, environment in one sense, that people keep on arguing, don't believe in only a particular ideology, but people talk among themselves. So we have certain traditions. And today, if you look, whatever is happening, people are more conscious than ever before. The poorest people today in India, poorest parents want their children to be educated. Never in the history of India, a poor parent thought that their children should be educated. Go and ask any poor family. They want their children to be educated. This is a first time historically there is a consciousness on the part of the poorest people that children should be exposed, because this country denied education for centuries to the people, but people want education now. They want a quality education. There is an education movement in India. Women today are far more conscious than ever before in the history. And in a sense, that when Ramayana was telecast, I was interested in a particular episode that Rama sending Sita to forest. How would they show in the episode? And the episode, because acknowledging the woman's consciousness, in this Ramansagar's Ramayana, Sita says, I want to go to forest. And Rama cries. Rama says, no, Sita, I don't want to. Sita says, no, public opinion. You are a king, you must respect public opinion, and therefore I want to go. This change had to be made even in Ramayana, acknowledging the consciousness of women. And our students are more conscious, they are questioning us. One of my friends says, when we were students, we were afraid of our teacher. When we have become teacher, we are afraid of our students. Now you will have a teacher-student relationship change. So this change also is taking place. Dalits are fighting. It's not that Dalits have given up. And Dalits today are more conscious as their human essence than perhaps for centuries. Tribals are fighting. And minorities, still now they are trying to look at solidarities, alliances between the secular forces. So therefore, there are increasingly trends of dehumanization and society state becoming undemocratic, relation between humans are getting ruptured, but at the same time new assertions are taking place. Now that's the reason from morning in the Lohiya Academy, the seminar, everybody was emphasizing that we have to protect democracy, we have to they protect the values, we have to build a grassroots democracy, we have to build an alternate to democracy. Democracy much more substantial. this very consciousness on the part of the youth, the minority, tribal, Dalits, women, I think this is the resource, is a democratic resource. Now how progressive forces try to democratize or harness this moral resource, the new democratic resources that nation has developed, I think that's where our hope lies. The future of democracy lies not necessarily looking to the state and so, but relation within the society, relation between state and society, and the nature of power relations within the power structure. If you take this larger process, with all said and done, even when America has gone for some sort of a neoliberal model, particularly not only corporate model, is not corporate economy, but the real estate, the mining, these are not capitalist development. Capitalist development is a resource, but people who are coming into politics, and Trump is an example of that. What happened to the American democracy? Now this, but at the same time there is a Mamdani. Talking of socialism in America, when I was in US, the minute you mention socialism, they get frightened. They used to get frightened. Oh, you are a communist? I lived with an American family. You are a communist? I said, one need not be a communist. When somebody talks of equality, dignified racial relations, the minute I used to ask them that why your society does not, fight discrimination. Why blacks are still there? Why color? In fact, the Lohia talks of the color revolution. That's why in 7th Revolution he talks of the color. You must get out of the prejudice of color. So therefore, there is a process going on. And Mamdani suddenly comes as a surprise with a campaign completely innovative. Talking to small groups. And I did not spend much of wealth. He will make, if your 5 people are there, he will come and talk to you. 10 months back, he started campaign. Within 10 months, he made a surprise that he becomes the mayor of New York town. So therefore, there are certain hopes in different parts of the world. There are certain hopes in India, but all of us who are sitting in this hall and celebrating centenary of a stalwart of India, a democrat, a true democrat of India, how do we harness the growing democratic forces and humanize the society, democratize the state? It all depends what historical role all of us played, whatever role, whatever place you are positioned. If you are able to play that role, I think still Indian democracy in a substantive sense can be built. Otherwise, perhaps India may have to pass through a fascism. But we are in a semi-fascist state. But whether we can circumvent this and then, democratize the society and preventing India getting it into full-blooded fascism, or we have to pass through a full-blooded fascism, I think is the threat, is the challenge before all of us. And I thought I'll share some of my concerns with you so that we reflect collectively, we think collectively to protect and promote and see that democracy, both as a politics and democracy as a way of life, is protected and human society will become more civilized, and next subsequent generation of India would be grateful to this generation if only we pass on values as this generation of people have done. I think, therefore, I see Rabi's life as a ray of hope for the future of India. I thank all of you, and particularly Roy Academy, for giving me this rare opportunity of sharing my concerns. Thank you very much.
Professor Haragopal thought provoking speech सुनिले जहाँ आम समस्तंक चिंता को चेतना को एते कथा जोगेची चिंता करने को पुणी थरे भाविबा को जे गणतंत्र विशेषकर गणतांत्रिक समाजवादी चिंतन जो आम पाई थोई देइचंती आ एते चमत्कार एनालिसिस प्रोसेस इवोल्यूशन मु या परे किछि कहबा को नाही मु ताकु समस्तक तरफरु आम रवि राय स्मृति कमिटी तरफ शतवार्षिकी स्मृति कमिटी तरफ आपण मानकर समस्त एत श्रोता जे एकत्रित होते समस्त तरफ कृतज्ञता और धन्यवाद जनाऊँ।